It started out as a synth. How did it end up like this? Well, for one, Boss knows exactly what they're doing. The SY-1 is a simple entry-level synth pedal, and if you keep using it, it gets you thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe I should think about upgrading to the SY-200 one of these days. That's how they get you. All right, let's step through what you heard in there. First off is this 80s synth organ sound, and I wanted something reminiscent of Van Halen 1984-ish, so I landed at a detuned string setting, which is string variation number 1. And then the synth bass part is filter bass 3, which is bass variation number 3. And then that lead part is a dual type sound, variation number 2, which they call wide dual lead. I had to go back and think about it, but I've actually upgraded quite a few pedals in my time. This Electro-Harmonix Bass Big Muff, fantastic pedal, but once I started looking at some of the features on the deluxe version, I went out and grabbed the upgrade. The Boss CE2 Chorus, classic sound, but a little bit on the noisy side. Grab the Waza version, fixes that, and adds a little bit more too. Synth has become a big part of my bass sound. I love using a pad effect to make things sound more grand and dramatic. And the organ effect is great for taking a chorus or a bridge just somewhere else. The looks on people's faces when they think they've got you all figured out as a band, and then all of a sudden they're hearing a pipe organ, that's worth the price of admission alone right there. Now, just to be clear, the SY-1 does all of that. No complaints at all in the sound department. But, like I said, there's a few ways that I like to use synth when I play. And the SY-1 is a what you see is what you hear pedal based entirely on how these knobs are set. There's no internal memory on it. So, going between string pad and organ, that means I have to bend over and change all the settings in between songs in anticipation of needing them. It also kind of puts a damper on my normal desire to explore a pedal and see what else I can do with it because, well, if I find this amazing new setting, that's just something else that I have to write down and recall and dial in if I want to use it. So the SY-200 having the ability to store and recall presets, well, that's my primary justification for upgrading from the SY-1. It also gives us a few new sound categories. It's got more sound variations within them. It's got 3 adjustment knobs instead of 2. It's got more options for controls and a whole lot of configurations and customizations that we can get to through the nice little menu in the display here. We're going to talk about all of that, but I've been talking for a little while and I know people get mad when I do that. So here's a little preset demo montage. You can really think of this pedal as having two halves. There's the part that listens to the incoming signal and then picks out what you're playing. And then there's the synthesizer part, which takes that information and creates or synthesizes this pedal's sound. And it's the same fundamental engine as the SY-1. So if you like your presets, you can keep your presets. The SY-1 has a concentric knob for tone or rate and depth, and another concentric pot for direct and effect levels. On the SY-200, we've got three knobs for three parameters of the sound. We've got direct and effect with their own dedicated knobs. These two guys for the type and variation, and we've got these buttons and this knob for working our way through the menus. And not for nothing, but these knobs are just really satisfying. They've got a good click to them. Of course, like all the SY pedals, it's polyphonic. It has no trouble tracking bends or dives. And it's sensitive to, among other things, note velocity. Listen to what happens when I finger pick and then palm mute and then regular pick these notes. And what's really kind of interesting is that it's not just this note at this intensity. It also takes into account the tonal characteristics of what you're playing on your guitar. So if you're in the neck pickup, you'll hear more bass in there. Flip it over to the bridge pickup and you'll hear more of the high-end treble coming through. That adds a whole lot of flexibility into what we're able to get from the pedal. SY-1 does it too, but it's just really cool and I felt it worth mentioning. Now, about these three knobs. All the way on the left, tone lets us choose whether we're accentuating high or low frequencies. And at least from my experience, depth and resonance, which these two knobs on the right usually are, they tend to mean different things and they have varying degrees of effect based on the different variations that you're in. And maybe you noticed this, I was able to quickly zoom through those resonance values by holding down the button while turning it. Yeah, these three knobs plus this knob up here are rotary encoders and buttons. So they do the turny-turny and the clicky-clicky. And typically the way the menu system works is when there's a multiple choice prompt, you'll click on the corresponding button that's underneath the option. And when there's values we want to adjust, we'll turn the knob under that value. And then this knob up here, that's used for moving between pages in the menus and hitting enter. So let's make our own memory. Let's get things started with a type and a variation. And let's just say string variation 11. The display shows us what these three knobs do for that particular variation, and it doesn't tell you the name of the variation on the screen, just the number, but there is a list online, and I've also put a link to it down in the video description. According to this list, what we're hearing here is a dramatic stir ring, assuming. It still says the name of the original memory that we had pulled up, no matter how much we change it, so don't let that throw you. I kind of wish I had some sort of indication that you are editing a preset and changing around the style and the variation, like another light or, a star or something like that. Regardless, in variation 11, these three knobs are for tone, resonance, and depth. If we jump down to variation 14, the detuned string variation, the middle knob lets us set the pitch offset. And once we get something we want to save, we're going to hold down these two buttons to write, and then we'll click this button to write. You'll see we can also exchange or initialize a memory, but right now we're going to write. Then we use the memory knob to select the memory that we want to save into. Hit the enter button up here, and it's giving us an opportunity to change or set the name. So let's give it a name. We'll fast forward action here. Then we're going to hit enter again to actually commit it to memory. And that's it. That memory saves the type, the variation, the three main adjustment knobs, plus the direct to effect mix. So you can have two memories that are identical, except for maybe one has the dry guitar sound in the mix and the other one doesn't. That can really come in handy. Something I really like is that we can set the memory extent min and max. Now, what the heck does that mean? It means that we're using a foot switch to cycle between memories, and it will go through the range that we specify instead of all 128. So if I've got 5 go-to settings, I can save those in slots 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, and then set the range min max to 100 and 104. Now, when I use this rightmost button to increment the memory number, I'm never more than 5 clicks away from my desired setting, and I don't have to go through all 128. That's pretty clever. That button on the right is Control 1, and we can set it to be whatever we want. There's a few options. We can add Control 2 with an FS5U foot switch, and we can add Control 3 with either a second FS5U or with an FS6, FS7, one of these 2-button foot switch dealies. So now we can set those extra foot switch control functions to bend the pitch, to hold the note, to tap tempo, to switch between tempos, to jump directly to a memory. So maybe we'll keep Control 1 cycling between the presets, then we'll set Control 2 to jump an octave, and Control 3 to hold the sound. Maybe something like this. We can also plug an expression pedal in here to sweep a value. That could be a lot of fun. It's got MIDI in case you want to sync it with another programmable unit, and there's a handy USB port for updating its firmware. Then there's an effects loop, and this is actually really important because, having an effects loop is cool and everything, but what I like to do is have the dry signal come out of here and then continue through the rest of my pedals and into my amp, and then take the regular output and send that into another bass amp or a PA so I can keep those signals separate and make separate adjustments for the loudness and the EQ for them. Just something to keep in mind. Let's rock out another little demo jam, then we'll come back, we'll go through the settings that we used for that, and then we'll wrap things up. All right, so in there, I started out with the synth feedbacker at dual variation number 1. You probably noticed I used an actual bass for that. So to do that, I went into the system menu and I changed it to bass from guitar. And I also set it to a line output since I wasn't going to be going through my regular guitar amp setup. That lead whirly organ was organ variation number 4, back on that gorgeous Reverend Jetstream. So if you haven't made a purchase yet and you're going back and forth between these two, think about how you realistically could anticipate putting the effect to use. If you're mostly going to use it for one effect, or changing things between songs and sets isn't going to be an issue, SY-1 might cover the bases for you and save you some money. If the lack of presets is or could conceivably be an issue, then I definitely recommend the SY-200. And you know what? If synth is going to be a huge part of your sound, there's also the SY-300 and 1000, which are just streets ahead. So kudos to Boss for making this engine available at so many different price points. You've definitely made a gateway pedal here. For right now, I'm all set with this, the SY-200, and as soon as I'm done with this video, I'm going to start programming a whole bunch of memories which I intend to use with the band right after I play around with the dual game setting a little bit more. Yeah, I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. Anyway, I hope you found this fun and helpful. If so, do me a favor, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you share these videos with your friends when they're looking for new effects. That stuff really helps, and I want to keep this going. So hit the buttons, keep on writing, keep on rocking. I'll catch you on the next one.